Welcome back to Jabol Story Recap. Today I'm going to explain a sci-fi thriller film. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. Inside a military-sanctioned research lab, a rat inadvertently scurries into a cage in search of food and water, but instead of finding sustenance, it becomes prey to an unseen predator. The invisible beast only becomes perceptible when the rat's blood taints its sharp fangs. Elsewhere, Dr. Sebastian Caine works overtime in his apartment to develop a formula to reverse a procedure that turns a subject invisible. He stops for a while to admire his alluring neighbor in the next building as she changes her clothes. Sebastian's anticipation of seeing her undressed turns to disappointment when the woman shuts the blinds on her bedroom window. As he paces around the apartment, he suddenly comes up with a breakthrough, so he immediately tests it on the computer. Not long, he calls his colleague and ex-girlfriend Linda McKay to report his success. During a video call, he notices a man on Linda's bed and asks who it is, but Linda turns the camera away from the bed, noting that her love life is no longer Sebastian's business. After showing Linda the breakthrough formula, he asks her to call their colleague Matt Kensington to prepare the gorilla Isabel so that they could conduct a live test. After dropping the call, Linda wakes up Matt and tells him that they have to go to the lab immediately because Sebastian finally cracked the reversal formula. Linda tells him that they should go in separate cars to keep their relationship a secret from Sebastian. Matt hints that they will have to let Sebastian know at some point, so Linda assures him that she will do it someday. Upon their arrival, Matt goes straight to Isabel's cage to sedate the invisible gorilla, but before he could inject her with the solution, the animal scratches him and runs out of the cage. As Matt chases the ape, he runs into Sebastian in the hallway. After grabbing a tranquilizer gun, Sebastian initiates a $10 wager, saying he'll be the one to get Isabel first. With the gorilla cornered, Matt shoots her with the tranquilizer, but he misses. Sebastian immediately follows up with one shot and hits the ape, knocking her unconscious. Dr. Sarah Kennedy, the lab veterinarian, suddenly barges in and confronts Sebastian about injecting the new formula into Isabel without even testing it. Sebastian argues that skipping the tests will save them time. Linda interrupts their argument to tell Sebastian that the lab is ready. After checking Isabel's vitals, Sarah sprays the gorilla's arms with a dye and taps it to prepare for the injection. As Matt prepares to inject Isabel with the serum, Sebastian grabs the syringe from Matt, saying the honor should go to him. Soon after injection, the serum travels through the ape's veins and makes its way to the heart. The research team watches in amazement as Isabel's vital organs become visible. However, the gorilla starts thrashing around in pain as her blood pressure and heart rate rise. Soon the ape starts going through cardiac arrest and eventually flatlines, so Linda hits her with the defibrillator several times. Sebastian asks Matt to administer an intracardiac injection after getting no response, but before Matt could inject the gorilla, her heart starts beating again. As her condition stabilizes, Isabel's body slowly becomes visible. The research team celebrates their success by dining in an upscale restaurant. During a moment alone with Linda, Sebastian reminisces about their failed relationship and hints that he wants to get back together with her. However, his hopes of rekindling their relationship are soon dashed when he notices her pulling back when he tries to kiss her. Days later, Sebastian meets with an oversight committee at the Pentagon to report his findings. But Linda and Matt are surprised to hear Sebastian telling them that he was unsuccessful at reversing the procedure. Sebastian tells the committee that the research team is close to finding a solution, but they still need more time. Dr. Howard Kramer, Sebastian's former teacher, praises his ingenuity and determination, but he warns Sebastian that the government can easily replace him if he doesn't show them any results soon. Sebastian tells Linda and Matt that he wasn't ready to let the military know about their success, fearing that the government will take over the project once they report their findings. Sebastian suggests conducting a test on humans without letting the government know. Matt reminds him that there are rules and procedures, but Sebastian argues that following the rules will get them nowhere. Sebastian assures them that they will have a better chance of winning the Nobel Prize by taking the project into their own hands. When they get back to the lab, Sebastian tells the rest of the team that they got the clearance to go ahead with human testing because he volunteered. Sensing the team's apprehensions, Sebastian reminds them that they had successfully brought back 7 apes in the past 4 weeks. He stresses that human testing would be the next logical step if they want to keep the project going. Once they go through with the procedure, Sebastian will stay invisible for 3 days before performing the reversal. On the day of the procedure, Matt tells Sebastian that he can still back out, but Sebastian is determined to be the first human test subject for his experiment. On the operating table, Sebastian takes the serum from Linda, saying he'll inject himself so Linda won't be blamed if anything goes wrong. Soon after shooting the serum into his vein, Sebastian starts feeling a tingle in his arm. He suddenly starts thrashing around from the pain as his skin starts to vanish. Seeing his unstable heart rate, Carter Abbey, the emergency medical technician, immediately brings the defibrillator beside the operating table. But before they could shock him, his heart rate begins to stabilize even as he writhes from the pain. Soon, Sebastian loses consciousness while his body slowly turns invisible. After 17 hours, Sebastian finally wakes up. Overwhelmed by the brightness, Sebastian tells Linda to turn off the lights, noting that he can't shut his eyelids. Linda points out that Sebastian can still see when he shuts them because they are now transparent. Sebastian immediately walks to a mirror to see if he has really turned invisible. He then walks with Matt and Linda to the lab to let the rest of the team marvel at his invisibility. Later on, Linda informs Sebastian that one of the team members will be staying with him if he needs anything. The rest of the team will be on alert so that they could run back to the lab within 30 minutes. Before leaving, Linda tells Sarah that Carter will come by at 6 in the morning while she will be back by 8. While Sarah sleeps, Sebastian approaches her and caresses her hair, trying to find out if she's awake. Not long, Sebastian starts unbuttoning her shirt and touches her inappropriately. When Sarah wakes up, she notices her unbuttoned shirt, so she asks Sebastian if he's in the room with her. When she looks at the monitor, Sebastian is not in his bed, but he gets back and lies down as soon as Sarah turns around. The following morning, Sarah tells Linda and Matt about her suspicion that Sebastian had done something to her while she was asleep. However, Sarah tells them not to confront Sebastian because she is still not sure if anything happened. When Matt asks Sebastian about his absence from his room, Sebastian explains that he went out to get coffee. 3 days after the procedure, the team prepares Sebastian for the reversal. After Matt injects him with the serum, Sebastian starts breathing heavily, telling them that something is wrong. Soon, he thrashes around the table and breaks free from the straps, so Matt and Carter hold him down. However, Sebastian still manages to get up from the table after throwing Carter across the room and kicking Matt in the face. His body becomes visible for a moment, but he drops to the ground and becomes unconscious. By the time they bring him back to the table, Linda discovers that Sebastian no longer has a pulse, so Matt performs CPR on him. His pulse eventually returns, and his body slowly becomes invisible again. When Sebastian wakes up hours later, Linda tells him that he almost died. Sebastian tells Linda that he needs to make some adjustments if he's going to remain invisible, so they make a latex mask to make him visible as he walks around the lab. Over the next few days, Matt desperately tries to figure out how to reverse the procedure without killing Sebastian. After 10 days of invisibility, Sebastian becomes frustrated from undergoing several tests and being confined to the lab. One night, he decides to go out when Carter is the only one at the lab watching over him. Failing to stop Sebastian, Carter immediately calls the other team members to alert them about Sebastian's departure. While driving on the road, he decides to have fun with 2 kids in a car by showing them his empty eye sockets. Linda asks Matt to go to the lab while she checks out Sebastian's apartment. When Sebastian gets home, he notices his neighbor at the next building changing her clothes. He hesitantly decides to take advantage of his invisibility and go to the next building to see the woman up close. Sebastian rings the bell several times until the woman opens the door and comes out of the room. When she gets back inside, Sebastian observes the woman combing her hair. He then moves the mirror several times, causing the woman to look around the room in a panic. As she turns away from him, Sebastian starts forcing himself on her. Linda soon arrives at Sebastian's apartment and finds his mask and clothes on the bed. After having his way with his neighbor, Sebastian looks out the window and sees Linda in his apartment. He waits until Linda leaves before returning to his home. Back at the lab, Frank Chase, the lab technician, hands out tranquilizer guns to the rest of the research team as they prepare to look for Sebastian outside. Sebastian soon arrives and tells them that he only went home to pick up a few things. Linda tells him that she'll go straight to the committee if he tries leaving the lab again. Linda tells Matt about her concern that the invisibility has now started to affect Sebastian's mind because he has been invisible far longer than the animals. While Carter performs some physical tests on him, Sebastian confesses that he messed with a woman while he was outside, and he liked it. A few days later, Matt calls Linda to tell her that he had a breakthrough. However, the process breaks down during a simulation at the lab. Sebastian expresses his frustration to Linda that he cannot take advantage of his invisibility, adding that he has become a prisoner at the lab. When Linda tells him that he's not a prisoner, Sebastian points out that Linda can freely go outside and be with her boyfriend while he's stuck in the lab. Later that night, Sebastian grabs a piece of electronic equipment at the lab and installs it in the camera inside his room to run a video loop of himself sleeping on the bed. He decides to visit Linda's apartment and finds out that she's been dating Matt. As Matt and Linda begin to make love, Sebastian breaks the window next to the bed, interrupting them. Linda calls the lab to find out if Sebastian has escaped, but Frank tells her that he's in bed. Sebastian goes back to the lab, enraged with jealousy. While pacing around the facility, he gets annoyed by the barking of the invisible dog, so he grabs it and slams it on the walls of the cage until it dies. When Sarah confronts Sebastian about the dead animal, he claims to be asleep when it died. After going through the video security footage, they conclude that Sebastian never left the room. While Linda is working at home, she's suddenly disturbed when she hears noises all over the room, so she runs to the lab to see if Sebastian's there. Linda sees him lying in bed on the video monitor, but she doesn't find him in his room. She realizes that he's been running a video loop of himself in bed, so she calls everyone in the team to get back to the lab. Meanwhile, Sebastian walks around the parking lot, observing the research team as they arrive. Matt and Linda visit Dr. Kramer to report Sebastian, but unbeknownst to them, Sebastian followed them there. After they leave, Sebastian attacks Dr. Kramer by the pool and drowns him. Dr. Kramer calls out to his wife for help, but by the time she gets to the pool, Dr. Kramer is already dead. When Linda arrives at the lab the next day, she tries to call Dr. Kramer, but she finds out that he drowned in the pool the previous night. She tries calling another member of the oversight committee, but the phone lines are suddenly disconnected. Matt and Linda try to leave the lab, but the security system won't let them use the elevator. Soon, the research team learns that their access codes inside the lab have been revoked. As the team starts searching for Sebastian, Janice Walton, the lab tech, falls behind while she grabs a thermal goggle. Sebastian suddenly appears at the door and strangles her with an IV line. She screams, but her voice is drowned out by the noise of the screeching animals in their cages. Failing to find Kramer, Linda uses the intercom to tell Sebastian that the committee already knows what he did. But Sebastian reveals that he killed Kramer the previous night before he could tell anyone about him. Soon, the team realizes that Janice is missing. Using their thermal goggles, they discover her lifeless body inside a locker. Linda asks Frank to restore their access code so that they can activate motion detectors. When they see someone moving through the corridors, Matt and Carter arm themselves with tranquilizer guns to find Sebastian as Linda guides them. Carter sees heat signatures behind the pipes, but Matt discovers that the heat is coming from the vent. While Matt is not looking, Sebastian grabs Carter while hiding on a ceiling pipe. Matt shoots him, but he misses and hits a pipe instead. As Matt continues to shoot, Sebastian flings Carter toward the wall. Carter hits the corner of a metal box by the pipes, cutting a major artery and causing massive blood loss. Sebastian surrounds himself with heat emanating from the pipes, rendering Matt's thermal goggles useless. After running out of tranquilizers, Matt grabs a fire extinguisher to use it against Sebastian. With the smoke from the fire extinguisher, Matt is able to see Sebastian, but he still struggles to hit him. Sebastian knocks Matt to the ground with a punch and a kick, but Linda arrives to take him to safety. Sarah learns that Carter has lost a lot of blood, so she grabs several bags of blood from the walk-in fridge. Before she could get back to Carter, Sebastian locks her in, so she splashes the blood all over the floor to see Sebastian's footsteps. She manages to douse Sebastian with blood, but Sebastian tackles her and shoots her with a tranquilizer gun. Not content with knocking Sarah unconscious, Sebastian breaks her neck, killing her instantly. Carter soon dies from severe blood loss while Frank waits for Sarah to get back. Frank leaves Carter's dead body behind and goes with Matt and Linda to find Sarah. When they discover her body in the walk-in fridge, Sebastian emerges and stabs Frank with a crowbar. Afterward, Sebastian stabs Matt with a metal bar in the lower chest and locks him and Linda inside the fridge. Sebastian goes back to his room to wear his mask and prepare to leave the lab. Linda patches up Matt's wound with duct tape and escapes from the fridge using a magnetized metal drawer handle. She then drags Matt out of the freezer and lights a fire to warm him up. Meanwhile, Sebastian gathers up some chemicals to create an explosive to blow up the lab and cover up his crimes. He puts the chemicals in a centrifuge and sets the timer for 5 minutes before heading to the elevator. Upon reaching the lift, Linda stops him and sets him ablaze with a flamethrower. She slides down to the floor to stop the elevator doors from closing and continues shooting flames at Sebastian. After walking out of the lift, Sebastian slowly peels away his singed clothes, making him invisible again. Linda uses the remaining fuel on the flamethrower to activate the sprinklers. Sebastian manages to sneak up on her and subdue her, but Matt comes to her rescue, knocking Sebastian out with a crowbar. Sebastian tries to hit Matt with the crowbar, but Matt fends him off, causing him to hit a fuse box. As Sebastian gets electrocuted, his body becomes partially visible. Matt and Linda discover the makeshift explosive that Sebastian made, so they run to the elevator in the hopes of climbing the ladder that leads outside. As they climb up, the makeshift bomb explodes, sending the elevator upwards, scraping Linda's shoulder. The elevator is then pulled back down, but it stops just before it hits Matt. As they start climbing the ladder again, Sebastian pulls Linda back down. Linda and Sebastian fall on the elevator, which is hanging only by a thick wire. As Linda struggles to break free, and Sebastian steals one last kiss, telling her that it's for old time's sake. While they kiss, Linda grabs the wire holding up the elevator and uses her foot to disconnect it. Linda hangs onto the wire as she watches Sebastian fall to his death down the elevator shaft. Linda and Matt soon emerge from the burning building as firefighters scramble to put out the flames. Before Sebastian turned invisible, the research team managed to tolerate his arrogance and extreme competitiveness. More of his bad qualities seemed to turn up soon after becoming the test subject of his own experiment. He immediately mistreated Sarah the first night he became invisible. When the reversal procedure failed, he grew agitated from being confined in the lab, so he decided to break protocol and leave. With no one to stop him outside, he takes advantage of his invisibility and assaults his neighbor. Sebastian's obsession with Linda also grew out of control throughout the experiment. Although he's not in a relationship with Linda, he killed an innocent dog in a jealous rage when he discovered her relationship with Matt. Out of all his bad traits, the deadliest so far has been his ambition. In an effort to preserve his career, he killed his mentor Dr. Kramer, and he created an elaborate plan to blow up the lab, with all his colleagues trapped inside, to destroy all the evidence of his crimes. If it wasn't for Linda and Matt, he might have succeeded. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like. If you think you knew the title of the movie, comments down below. Thanks.